Okay, this lesson is 3.2 extension lesson, and it's on factoring expressions. And I want you to think of factoring as the undistributive property. So when we're factoring, we're actually taking out whatever had been distributed in. So let's look at how to factor expressions. The first step is you need to find the greatest common factor. So we have an example here of 24x minus 18. So we need to take the numbers 24 and 18, and we need to figure out what's the biggest number that goes into both of those. You could go ahead and factor it out. 2 goes into 24 12 times. 2 goes into 12 6 times. 2 goes into 6 3 times. So here are my factors along the outside. Same thing for 18. 2 goes into 18 9 times, which is 3 and 3. So now if I look at what's in common, there is a 2 in both, and there is a 3 in both. So 2 times 3 is 6. So 6 is my greatest common factor in this case. Some of you might have been able to look at 24 and 18 and known that it was 6. So now you're going to divide. So after you find the greatest common factor, you're going to divide it out of everything. So I'm just going to write 6 underneath here to remind me that I'm dividing. Now 24 divided by 6 is 4. And the x stays. 18 divided by 6 is 3. So when I factor the 6 out, I get 4x minus 3, but I need to keep that 6. So I actually put it on the outside. Okay, so we can think of this as the undistributed property because what I did is I just took a 6 out of 24x minus 18. Now I could distribute that back in. 6 times 4 is 24x. 6 times 3 is 18. And I got back to where I started. So really we're undistributing a number. So let's start off with just looking at, these should be on your homework, on your notes. Factor using the greatest common factor. I have 8 minus 22. Now, there's no variables here. We're just going to kind of think of what's the biggest number that goes into both of them. And if you break these down, the only number that goes into each of those is 2. So 2 is my greatest common factor, so I'm going to divide by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 22 divided by 2 is 11. You keep the sign in between them. And so now I'm going to write on the outside what I factored out, which was a 2. And that is called factoring. You're undoing the distributive property. So let's look at the next one. 6y plus 3. What number do you think goes into 6 and 3? And the answer is 3. So we are going to divide by 3 on each of these. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Keep your variable, the y. Plus 3 divided by 3 is 1. Make sure you keep that a 1. Don't change it to a 0. I've got to write on the outside what I factored out, which was my 3. So I undistributed my 3 and came up with 3 times 2y plus 1. I could go ahead and distribute that back in to get back to where I started. Okay, the next one I have 16p minus 8. The number that goes into both of those is 8. So I'm going to divide by 8. 16 divided by 8 is 2. Keep my variable p. Minus, because I have a subtraction sign, and 8 divided by 8 is 1. So now I have factored out an 8, so I will write an 8 in front to show that that's what I factored out or undistributed. Okay, let's look at the next one. It's okay that I have decimals. I'm going to go ahead and factor out. It says 1.2k plus 24. In this case, I want to get my variable alone. So I want to factor out the coefficient of the variable, which in this case is 1.2. So I'm going to divide each of these by 1.2. And 1.2 divided by 1.2 is just 1. Okay. And then I have 24 divided by 1.2, and that's 20. So I come up with k plus 20, and I need to show that I factored out the 1.2. Now on this last example, it wasn't super obvious that my greatest common factor would be. But what you're going to practice on a lot of your work today is just getting the variable so that it does not have a number in front of it. And we call that a coefficient. So let's look at the next problem on your paper. It says to factor out the coefficient. So you don't even have to think, what is my greatest common factor? You just have to divide out or factor out the number in front of the variable, because that's called a coefficient. It is the number in front of the variable. So I have a 1/2 in front of my variable, so I'm going to factor out a 1/2 and see what's left. So really you're dividing each thing by 1/2. Well, 1/2 divided by 1/2 is just 1. So that becomes 1m. And again, 1/2 divided by 1/2 is 1. So this is the factored form. You undistribute that 1/2. Let's look at the next one. What is your coefficient? It is the number in front of the variable, so it's 3/10. So you're going to divide out a 3/10 and see what's left. So you divide each of these by 3/10. Well, 3/10 divided by 3/10 is just 1. That's going to happen every time you divide out the coefficient. It will be a 1. And then for the next one, you have -3/5 divided by 3/10. So you can use your calculator if you want to, or you could do it by hand. Either way, you're going to get a 2. So it's -2. And this actually looks a lot simpler than what we started with. So factoring can simplify things for you. So try the next one. Turn it back on when you're ready to look at it. Okay, hopefully you've taken a chance to try this one. The leading coefficient is 1.5, so you're going to factor out 1.5, which means you divide each thing by 1.5. Again, you're going to get just your variable by yourself, and 4.5 divided by 1.5 is just 3, so you would say -3. And that is what's factoring. Factoring is just working through to get something you undistribute it. So for your assignment for factoring, instead of doing the page in the book, I want you to look in your activity packet, and there is a page in there that you're going to work on, and it's on page 51 through 52, and you're just going to work through that, and that will be your homework for this. And there is no homework quiz, so that will be your assignment for there. So go ahead and work on that, and let me know if you have any questions.